Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's episode of The Elouise Show. So, tonight's episode is actually going to be a very, very special episode. Why, you ask? Well, today there will be no guests. Instead, we're going to talk through the 19 episodes that we've had thus far in season one. So where to start? Let's start with me. My name is Lynette Elouise, and I am your host. I started the Elouise show, I think in July. In July. Oh my goodness, it's what month are we in? November. I started the Elouise show in July. As you know, this year we've had a pandemic. We've had a lot of attention on Black lives. We've had, an election year. So there was just a lot happening and a lot to kind of discuss. So what better way than on a platform with friends and also by meshing it in with a bunch of other topics. So what will we start with first? I want to start with my hidden gems. What do I mean by hidden gems? These are moments that are like embedded into the episodes that I'll be talking about that are like my little, favorite moments. Like they're just little nuggets either of inspiration, of, just really good information or just something beautiful to watch. The first moment that I'd like to discuss is on episode 2. And episodes 2, we discussed the focus of the movement, the current day civil rights movement. My guest was Kas. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up. So we'll be actually surfing through YouTube a lot. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. Hopefully I remember to look at you as I look through here. I'll be sharing my screen. We're going to go onto YouTube and we're going to look at this episode. Now, fun fact, I will be checking comments and stuff. So if you're logged on, you have a question about anything you just saw, or if there's just anything at all you want to discuss, please, please, please feel free to, write it in the chat and I will address it in the show. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go into YouTube. So actually, I think it's better if you guys are tracking me as I do this. So we're going to go to my Safari page. Please let me know that you can see what I see. Can you see what I see? Yeah, I don't have a singing voice. And we're going to go to YouTube, as I like to say. And we're going to go to the Elouise Show, episode 2. So there's going to be a lot of this episode, right? Boom. And I think I might have it queued up already. Let's see. I wanted to go. What we're going to be looking at is actually halfway into it. So it's at minute 38, little more than halfway into it. Minute 38. I think it was like, or sorry, minute 35, 35:44. Here we go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Let's make sure our sound is on. And that has been happening for forever. And we haven't seen like an outcry, or protests like this to be sustained as long in a while. I mean, the closest to it, I would say, was when Black Lives Matter, the hashtag came along the first time around. But I think this is different. This is a little bit more volatile at times. I think honestly it's a lot less organized, but the numbers that are coming out to speak on support and then on top of that, I feel like it's dwindling down a little bit, and I hope not, because I think that there's a lot of work to be done. But why now? Why was it an uproar now? What do you believe is the reason for people saying no, enough is enough today?
I think about this, right? Like, I think about this pretty often, and this is actually the first time that I have come to this realization. But I think one thing for sure, which we were just talking about, is the virus, right? Like it's caused like an economic in like collapse, essentially. Like we're inverting the ways in which we know how to be in the world. We're not able to go to our jobs. We don't have like access to, some people are like in very precarious situations right now who like are already facing a pandemic on its own, and it's called racism, and it's called classism, and it's called, you know, people not getting access to resources. So I think that we were already sort of like in this conundrum collectively, but I think the virus and the impact, the people that it impacted specifically have definitely influenced more action this time around. And I will also say like in terms of money, like the Black dollar is worth a lot. And I'm not going to say that we all spend it the same way or anything like that, but these businesses are suffering right now, and they don't have a way to sort of recoup unless they. So I think some of the attention that this movement is getting now, some of it is a little disingenuous, because it's like, where were you in 2014? Where were you in 2015? Now that your money is in danger, now you want to show up. So it's like, it's a mix of things where I'm like, I feel resentful, but I'm also like, the people who are really doing the work, the people who've been kind of like doing this local grassroots organizing are now getting the platform that they deserve, you know? And so I think it's coronavirus. I think it's also people are reflecting now, you know, like people are really trying to unpack the ways in which they've been impacted or perpetuated racist ideology. Um, and I think it's also like this hyper connectedness, because we can't see each other. Now we're all turning to media. So it's like this death cycle of Black people. And I think I'm seeing a lot more now, like Black people feeling empowered and joy, but it's also just like the pain of seeing all of that.
So that's episode 2, and that's Cass, and this is us. We're talking about the movement. So, you know, I like to call it the modern day civil rights movement. And just Black lives were getting a lot of attention. Queer, trans, Black trans lives were getting a lot of attention. You know, equality was a major discussion. And so, what we were exploring was the idea of why now? If injustice is something that we see all the time and time again, if we are constantly seeing Black and brown bodies, you know, slain and you know, overly sexualized and you know, just you know, dragged through the mud in mainstream media, why is it that now people are outraged to this extent? So I think that Cass raised some great points, and she actually sang on that episode too. So if you haven't gotten a chance to check out episode 2, please, you know, Google it, go into YouTube, and look at episode 2, and you can watch the full interview because that was not the only gem that she dropped there. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but I do have 5 gems for you guys. The second gem that we're going to get into is actually in episode 3. And no, we will not be going in consecutive order this entire time. But for episode 3, we kind of were talking about Black fatherhood. And what I thought was interesting was, I think the clip that I'm about to show you is about being a man versus being a young Black man. And this is earlier on in the conversation. This is like within the first 15 minutes, within the first quarter. So we're going to go ahead back into the World Wide Web, and we are going to check out episode 3, which will be up next.
Also, I
have it almost queued up. So I think what we're going to is the 11-minute point, 11:38. Hopefully I don't go too far ahead like I did, or too far behind like I did last time. So boom. And if you're ready, let's go.
So let's see. First is to be a man, right? So to be a man is to be able to handle the responsibilities in which you have placed in front of you. And also knowing that there's always going to be eyes on you. Like everybody, certain people have more eyes on them than other people, right? So you have people viewing you from different levels. Like I would say, for instance, from my experience, right? Inside my family, I was one of the oldest inside the family of all of the boys. My whole generation is all predominantly males, right? I have one female cousin, and not to say that leadership was thrust upon me, but I've kind of figured my place inside the family structure. So one thing that I always look at is that everybody who's younger than me is going to be looking up to me. So as a man, I want to be able to portray that and show them the right way to do things, because me growing up, I didn't have that, right? So I didn't have that. Now, to be Black, man, I understand that there are more obstacles for me to navigate through and more things that I have to do. So I have to be exactly on point with everything that I do. So that just feeds into the previous one, right? One, I have all these eyes looking at me and watching me. And then to navigate through this world, I have all of these things that I have to make sure that I watch. So I have all of those steps. And then the third part of it would be everything that I've learned and understood, right? Because they say a wise man learns from his mistakes. No, a smart man learns from his mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, right?
So that was episode 3 that talking about, the differences between being a Black man versus being a young Black man, and like how one can pass down, in fatherhood, in Black fatherhood specifically, what he can pass down to his son. The cool part of this episode is we have a Black man. This was the first Black man that I had on the show. The first 2 episodes were with, not Black men. And here you have a man who's an entrepreneur, but is also in the workplace, but is also a father. So we have so many different topics that we touch upon in that episode. A very, very brilliant mind. Shout out to Damian Dudley, and check out Dudley Designs. Oh, and going back to Cas, please be sure to check out Cas's music. I believe you can find their music on Spotify, SoundCloud as well, if I'm not mistaken. And I sent a message in the live chat, but anyone who's watching this afterwards, I don't believe gets to see the live chat. The proper pronouns for Cas are they, them. My apologies. Let's all be sure to be very, very conscientious of, people's identities. So the next gem. Okay, so the next episode, mind you, all the episodes are so much fun and everyone is like amazing, but the next episode was kind of really cool. It was with Keola George, and we were kind of talking about the levels of friendship. So this episode is episode 12. It was entitled Sisterhood. So we're again going to be in the first quarter of the episode, minute 14:25. It's about 16:19. So hold on, let's share this screen again, and let's relive this really fun moment with this amazing woman. Brilliant mind, by the way, Keola George. For anyone who didn't watch the episode, let me remind you of who we're talking about. So Keola George is a woman who basically built this network called the Girlfriends Network. And the ultimate goal of it is to really just unite brilliant women in fun spaces, and Keola George is also behind Haber app. So if you don't know what the Haber app is, she talks about it on the show, but it's a way to kind of pre-check out where you're going to move to. You can kind of communicate with your neighbors and like really see if the apartment that you're signing up for is really up to par. And if you live in a place like New York City, you know that that's really important, because sometimes you move out of urgency and don't really get a chance to vet things the way you would like to. And the Haber app gives you a chance to do so. So again, this clip will be talking about the levels of friendship, because she has the Girlfriends Network, and sisterhood is a major part of her brand. So let's check out what Keola has to say.
I think, it's important to have like friends that you can tap into, whatever if you need to ask a question, somebody you need to have those connections. Somebody that you can reach out to, and it's not like super awkward that you're reaching out to them. Then when it comes to girlfriend, to like my good girlfriends, these are people that I you know, you check in on them. Like I check in all the time. I try, you know, for the most part, I know what's going on in their lives, but I don't necessarily know everything that's going on. But at the same token, if I desperately need something, or they need a, you know, a friend, like I'm there for them. Like that's how I show up for people. I probably, I try to make time for everyone and not just like group time. I try to make sure that I'm there for people and on an individual basis. And hey, girl, you good? Somebody that's just gonna check in and make sure they're okay. And then I have my sisters, and that's like, they're not my blood sisters, but we talk every day. What's going on? My life is falling apart. That kind of friendships. I have one like sisters that are, they're, you know, single moms like me. I have sisters that are, they're going through man dating issues like me. They're going through divorces. But we have that level of friendship that it's like, sis,
Right.
I'm having a terrible day. I need you to tell me it's gonna be okay.
So honestly, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking to yourself, Lynette, like you just said, you started the show because you wanted to contribute to like the conversation as it related to like, you know, the modern day civil rights movement. How did we go from that to like what it takes to be a good girlfriend? Well, I'll tell you, Blackness is not one dimensional, and our struggle is not our only story. So how do we change the narrative is the question, right? The way we change the narrative is by taking control and telling our stories, not just one side of the story, but the entire story. And we Black people are multifaceted, we are multidimensional, we have a lot to say on varying topics. So yes, the way that I can contribute to what's going on in the world today is in part by having a conversation with the wonderful, brilliant mind of Keola George about what it takes to be a good friend. What are the levels of friendship? Not everyone is for everybody, obviously, but that doesn't mean you can't, you know, you can't interact with people. There's just levels to this shit, as they say, you know? Some people are your ride or dies. Some people are, you know, your acquaintances, and that's okay. You can still be a good friend to people on varying levels, as she was saying. So that was, I believe, gem number 3. Shout out to Keola George. Download the Haber app. And if you're a woman in the New York City area, like, you know, download the Good Girlfriends Network. I know we're like buckling down here because of the rising numbers because of the pandemic, but definitely stay in touch with her network and see what she has coming up. You never know. Might be something COVID friendly. Check her out. And again, you can watch the full episode by going on YouTube and looking up The Elouise Show, episode 12. So our next gem, let's see. Oh, and Amir Langhorn, he agrees with us. He says, Blackness is not one dimensional. I say us like that. There's more people here talking. Yeah, me, myself, and I. Amir agrees with all 3 of us. So yes, now we are going to go on to episode 13. Started from the bottom with Donjai, as I like to say, but it's really pronounced Donjay Gilmore. So this brilliant mind is a dope photographer, first and foremost, that is his passion, but a well-known videographer, especially in the underground hip hop scene. Hailing from Uptown, we're not going to say the Bronx, even though he's from the Bronx, because a lot of what he does is in Harlem, although like now he's international with it. So shout out to Don J. And we're going to talk about living on your own at a young age. And this, to me, this is a hidden gem for me because Mr. Gilmore, Mr. Don J. Gilmore is actually his life story is very inspiring, and his demeanor is always humble. So, and he doesn't get in front of the camera much. So it's really great to hear him speak on, you know, his journey Yeah, so it's really, really exciting. So we're just gonna pull up, episode 13. And we're gonna go, this is like in the second quarter, the beginning of the second quarter of the Elouise show, living on your own at a young age. This is around the 18-minute mark, 19 minute mark. I would probably go to the next one, right? We're just continue on with what I was, my episode with Keola. So I think it's like 1855. How do you know this off the top? I don't, I took a note. Okay, let's go. Move on your own at such a young age.
Well, my family structure, it was broken up ever since my mother died. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of like a every person for themselves situation, getting where you fit in, like grow up kind of fast. This is what you need to do if you want to become this kind of situation. So after high school, like I done, lived in shelters like the Covenant House downtown, Good Shepherd services, and that was kind of like a break for me to live somewhere, to live in the city on 23rd, 24th Street. And the gift of that was that you would pay rent and get the money back within 2 years when you leave to get on your own again. But another gift of that is that I was right in Paul's, the like Chelsea, the meatpacking district. I was able to go to these clubs and
build yourself up.
Yes. So the clubs is kind of where I got the clubs in Harlem. Although I'm from the Bronx, but working in Harlem and just being around like Harlem, they kind of cultivated me.
So this is really cool because after this, we kind of get into like the story of like his career journey and how he made it happen for himself. But check it out, episode 13. The next gem, I know what you're thinking. What could it be, Lynette? Well, we're actually going to episode 14. Don't laugh at me. I know I told you we weren't going to be in consecutive order. This just happened. So episode 14, I sat down with Bo D. So fun fact, I met Bo D 2 years ago in New Orleans. I was there for a birthday vacation with one of my close friends. And I brought my camera. I was like, I'm going to go to New Orleans and I'm going to interview some people. And I met this dope rapper. At the time, like all I knew about Bo D was that like he was a rapper. And then we sat down, we had a conversation, which you can actually see also on YouTube. It is L's. It's L's, I believe is the series, and it's the interview with Bo D. You can see like the conversation I had with him then. So what we were talking about, the topic of this episode was surviving through COVID restrictions. Well, surviving in NOLA was like the episode, making it in NOLA was the episode title. But in this particular conversation, we were talking about, surviving the current restrictions through COVID as an artist. And this question, what was fun about this particular question is that it was given to me. I did a poll on Instagram, and asked the audience, what would you like me to ask this artist? And the question that came up was, that this question that he's about to answer. So this is close to the midpoint mark. It's the later half of the second quarter of the episode. And it's at the 29-minute mark. So let's check out what Bodhi has to say. Her question was, how have artists been surviving in NOLA with venues shut down?
Well, the artists that I know, they have just simply become content creators. I feel like that setting the example thing, it's kind of like been resonating with the circle of artists that I run with. My favorite conversation to have since the quarantine is, yo, you need to come up with some reoccurring content. You need to give people a reason to keep coming back, whether it be every week or every other week or every month. You need to come up with something that's going to keep people coming back, because everybody's sitting at home in front of their computer or in front of their cell phone. I mean, cell phones are like an extension to life these days. So, and now they're making them to perform like cinema cameras. You can get video quality to the level of creating movies.
So I think that this conversation is dope because not only are we talking about like, you know, how these artists in NOLA are surviving, and it kind of goes past New Orleans at this point because the pandemic is global. After this, he kind of really goes into like how you can make things work for yourself through this bad economy, through this pandemic, like, you know. So it's really, really cool. Historically speaking, great artwork always come around the time of depression. So guys, don't be sad. Does the pandemic have you down? Are you sitting at home with a frown? Not to worry. Great artwork is on the way because everyone feels your pain. Okay, so those are my 5 hidden gems. Next, I kind of want to highlight some of the most viewed episodes. So we're going to talk about the top 3 most viewed episodes, and yeah, we're just going to get into it, you know. First, the number 1, should I go 3 to 1 or should I go 1 to 3? Let's go 3 to 1. So the 3rd most viewed episode is featuring Aniqua Wilkerson. Aniqua Wilkerson is this amazing fabric arts or fabric artist, I guess would be the way to say it. She makes dolls. She makes custom made dolls. Her brand is My Kind of Thing, and she's really good at what she does. And then she's also an educator, so you know she teaches what she knows. She's well known in the fabric arts community, and she's just a phenomenal person overall. And in this conversation, because of what she does with her dolls, representation is really important to her, right? So you look at her dolls and they come in varying skin tones, right? Just like the world. And so for this episode, we were talking about colorism. And this particular conversation that we were having, I think was really cool because we were talking about the color spectrum. And, you know, I think it's perfect to have that conversation with someone who is, you know, making dolls specifically of all different shades, because, you know, that is exactly like, that's your expertise, the color spectrum. Oh, what did I do?
Right now, it's right here, you know,
Maybe
giving
I
me
should
this
just
nice
go
little
boom. Let's finesse. You
2
wanna see what
generations
the
ago. We
finesse
don't know that
looks
we
like?
grew our
We're
own
gonna go
food.
boom. Don't worry, we're gonna go to some of these other episodes too. You're gonna see a little bit of chef as well. So the conversation that we're having about the color spectrum happens around the 22nd minute mark. 22, 22, 22, right around here-ish. Let's go. Growing up as a Black girl in America, like, and that's a different time because we're in 2020 right now. You know, you were growing up in a different time. So you're a dark skin. Well, you're not actually not that dark skin, but
So,
in you know, comparably.
well,
You know,
on the spectrum, because that's another thing that I ran into interesting perspectives of what people think dark is and what people think light is. It's very
it's relative, but I feel like you would be brown skin. I don't even really think that you're a dark skin.
So,
but like a white person, you might be dark skin and I might be brown skin.
It depends on who you're talking to. That's why I don't really like. So for me, the way I actually have it set up in my scale is that I do a wide variety of light, medium, and dark. And I try to keep an even amount of each of those classifications. And that's usually my reference point. So I have a wider reference point of what light is, what medium is, and what dark is. The average person might not have that reference point. That's first, right? Then we have to talk about how people view themselves, right? And how people view themselves is often based on what they think of themselves and how relative it is to what society says is okay, right? This is where you'll get people who are dark skinned that'll be like, oh, I'm not dark skinned. Or you'll get people who are, you know, brown skinned, swearing up and down they light skinned. And you get all these weird confusions because it's relative to what their experience is, right? Because I come from a background where I'm one of 7 children, we have a whole wide range from light skin to dark skin. Skin tone was never even a thing that I paid attention to. because I would be considered one of the medium kids because my mother had light-skinned children, dark-skinned children, medium children. So it never really, and we're all brothers and sisters. So
I think that this conversation is really, really an important one to have. And the beauty of this particular conversation is colorism transcends, just like American issues. Like colorism is a really major topic as it relates to Blackness, all like internationally. And she raised a really good point in the conversation about self-awareness and self-identifiers. One thing I realized recently is you can learn a lot about a person by how they self-identify, right? And yeah, she really gets into it. Anika Wilkerson is a brilliant person. Outside of her trade, she's a very opinionated, strong woman who knows her shit. All right, so check her out. All right, so that was the third most viewed episode of the Elouise Show. Our second most viewed episode of the Elouise Show was actually episode 11 with literally a childhood friend of mine, Nayoche Cabrera, also known as Wild Nayo. We speak about feminism and sexuality, and she really like shocked me in this conversation. But it was a fun time. It was a good time, and yeah, if you haven't watched it, check it out. But we're going to watch a segment that literally it's one of the few segments that has an actual title as of now, but it was very easy to entitle because of what she said. So the name of this particular episode or this particular title of this segment that you're going to see is going to be called Bow Down to the Nipple. And why, you ask? I will show you. So this conversation happens around in the second quarter, towards the beginning of the second quarter, and it's the 21st minute mark, close to 22nd minute mark. So we're gonna start around here, okay, and we are going to press play.
People, and yes, the woman body can be a sexual thing, but people sexualize it. You know what I mean? Like in terms, like the woman body is actually very nurturing. Like, like I don't understand like what's wrong with like women showing their nipples. Like nipples give you life. And I feel like people try to like make that into something more. And also, Josephine Baker, for those of you who don't know, she was very famous in Europe for dancing around in a banana skirt and some pearls. And she was like, up there, like she was performing for the Sophisticated Punch, okay, like way back in the day, and she was seen as like a respected artist, a respected dancer. So it's just funny how you look at Europe in a lot of back in the day, and even now, like I feel like you see like women's breasts on TV more. It's not such a big thing like it is in America, like it's just like we see a woman's body, naked body here, and it's like, oh no, or like we see a woman breastfeeding and we're like, put your nipple away. And it's like, for what? Like this was you like 30, 40 years ago. So like, what are you tripping about? Like without this, you wouldn't be here right now. So pay respect to the nipple, bow down to the nipple. Like, it's just frustrating.
Period. Poo. Bow down to the nipple. If you agree, say something in this live chat. I think she raises a really good point. Like, American culture definitely is like an over sexualized culture, but specifically, like for some reason, Americans go crazy about a woman's body, and specifically as it relates to like women's breasts. And the conversation of women breastfeeding, like you're literally giving nourishment to your child. Why is it even a conversation? Everybody needs to just take a chill pill for reals. So that was the second most viewed episode. So Wild Nile is her nickname, and that's her proper nickname. She does a spoken word piece on episode 11. So if you haven't watched it yet, go back, watch it. She's an amazing artist, a great writer, a great performer. She does act. And she does have an OnlyFans page. So check her out on Instagram at Wild Nile. And I believe the link to her OnlyFans is in her bio. And you definitely want to check that out because it gets wild, guys. So now let's talk about the number one most viewed episode on the Elouise show. I would do a drum roll, but obviously it's not that good because I don't have a drum. But maybe on season 2, I should bring out some congas. What do you think about that? Let me know. Let me know in the live chat. Congas sí, congas no. I don't know. But the most viewed episode of the Elouise show was episode 10 featuring Rain of Rain Visuals. So on this episode, we are consistently having a conversation about Black imagery, like how Blackness is portrayed in a media landscape. And it was just a really, really fun conversation, a really real conversation to have. And this conversation that we're going to be highlighting happens in the first quarter. We're going to go to the 7-minute mark, and we're going to play a little bit of what she has to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what that is. That's our stereotype. We've always been stereotyped. We always had the story written for us. So why not create a story for us, by us?
I like what you're saying. So with and keeping with the theme of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What do you believe? What has your work thus far contributed to the Black catalog, whether it be history, art, media, whatever?
Yeah.
What has it contributed, and what do you hope to contribute moving forward?
It contributes some honesty, a level of honesty. It puts out awareness. And again, it just tells that story of how diverse we are. I can, like my last project, Truth, I basically told a story of how it feels to be in quarantine and feeling scared to go outside, not only because it's a pandemic, but because I have brothers, I have, sisters that are out there who are fighting a fight, but may not return home. And we've heard that so many times. And again, with that project, I'm telling a truth to what it looks like in our society. But then I'll have other projects. I have a Rain On project where I kind of shine light on certain individuals that I meet. And it's just to create the beauty and bring the beauty out, in terms of a fro, natural hair, or even just long braids, anything. It's just to tell a story of, again, how diverse we are. And what I'm hoping to do one day is just be a great filmmaker and just continue to contribute to what Black imagery is, and to just, again, go so far that we just provide a level of truth in our society that can hopefully open doors to other people. And touch people,
it's funny. Ironically enough, in the actual live chat, we have Edwin Lee Gibson, who is a thespian, a writer, an all-around amazing artist, and my mentor. So hi, Edwin. One of the most impactful things Edwin has ever taught me as it relates to, art is the power and the importance of storytelling. We have to do the story justice, by, being honest, being honest with the story, being honest about the circumstances. You just have to be true to the story. You have to make the story the most important thing, the most important conversation. And I think that what Rain says on this episode consistently throughout is the importance of having, Black filmmakers and Black people in media so that Black stories can be spoken of from a place of truth. If you don't know the Black experience, how can you truthfully tell it? And she does so very eloquently. She raises some major points about some problematic areas as it relates to Black imagery, and she has the entire conversation is really, really inspiring. So if you haven't watched it yet, please check out this episode and you'll see why it is the #1 viewed episode of the Elouise show. definitely a great conversation. She's definitely an amazing person, and I cannot wait till the day that I get to work with her on a set. So let's go on to the next phase of what we're going to be recapping here. So let's highlight some really important conversations. So now I want to take you back. How far back? As far back as to, drum roll, please. Kaz, I saw you in the chats. I saw that you said yes to the congas. Let's see if we can get some congas on the next episode. We're going to take it back to the inaugural Elouise show episode. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am talking about episode 1. Did I really misspell my name? Are you guys all peeping that? Did you see how I missed the U? How do you do that? How, Sway? Okay, so we're going to the inaugural episode of the Elouise show. We are going to the 28-minute mark, and we're going to talk about what we'd like to see with regards to reparations. Word in the 2020 presidential election, they talk, people have mentioned reparations, giving Black people reparations. I want to know, what does that mean? Number one, what others say it, but number two, what do we want it to mean? Like, in terms of reparations, in terms of reform, what would you like to see?
Well, I love this question, right? Because when it goes down to reparations need to be like, we need to really benefit off of reparations, right? And I don't think Black people will benefit off of getting a dollar bill. We need a 750 credit score. All Black people need a 750 credit score. All Black people. If you were rooted from slavery, if your roots go back to slavery, you need a 750 credit score. I don't care what your lifestyle is. I don't give a fuck if you're in jail. That's the reparations. Now, on top of that, give us the South. But that's a push. That's what I would want. But we're going to focus on the 750 credit score. But along with those 750 credit scores, I want them to provide financial training and credit training free with that 750 credit score.
So what I think is particularly cool about this conversation is that when having the discussion of reparations, I have never, ever heard anyone mention credit score. I thought it was a really brilliant take, and I have no clue what it would take to like actually have that like plan be rolled out. But I thought it was really interesting because in order to get anything in this country right now, you do need to have good credit and you do need to have collateral. So she kind of touches her basis because in the conversation, she mentions a 750 credit score. She also mentions, training people, training them on how to maintain that credit score, how to build income. So I think that was also an interesting point. And I don't know if she said it in this clip, but at some point she mentions, also having collateral. So basically setting people up so that they can own properties, businesses, and move forward, kind of leveling out the playing field, because unfortunately there's a major barrier of entry as it relates to like the business world. For instance, a booming industry right now is medical marijuana. A lot of states have it medically. Some states have it for leisure. And so a booming industry right now, or a booming business that would be a very lucrative one, is what are they called? Dispensaries, right? But the barrier of entry to have a dispensary is through the roof. I'm sure you're going to have great credit. I'm sure the money down is ridiculous. And also the stipulations that they'll probably have on who can actually open one, again, through the roof. So what she's talking about when she mentions a 750 credit score, if you're not picking up what she's putting down, is she's talking about leveling the playing field and making it easier for people to, make their dreams come true and really get into this marketplace, not run to try to have to play catch up. All right, let me fix my credit. All right, let me get this money together. All right, let me finally go ahead and get into this business. She's like, no, let us be where you are and let's see where we get. So I thought it was an interesting perspective. So Another important conversation to have was episode 7. And I had this conversation with Hassani Henderson, and we were talking about the conversation. We were talking about basically the gun violence conversation. You know, that's a major issue that was brought up when having discussions about like Kamala and Biden in this last presidential campaign. So we're gonna go to episode 7, the 44-minute mark. Let me share my screen so you can see what I see. Oh, so Hassani Henderson. Who is that, Lynette? Well, I'm gonna tell you. Hassani Henderson is a gentleman who has a nonprofit in Chicago called the Take Back Chicago. And why does it do that? See, I didn't do it. It auto-corrected me. And their mission is to stop gun violence in Chicago. As you know, gun violence in Chicago is through the roof. It's been exponentially higher this summer. And his goal is to, you know, keep kids off the streets and give them, you know, other things to do. So shout out to Hassani and the Take Back Shy, and you can follow his organization at the Take Back Shy on Instagram. So we're going to go to this 44-minute mark, and we're going to go ahead and watch what he has to say.
Biden and Kamala, they both feel like there should be much stricter regulations on who can actually procure a firearm. And they also feel like anyone with a firearm has to be licensed, like regardless, right? They also have this, something that I read about, where to fire it, you would have to like put your fingerprint on it or something of that nature, which is very interesting. I don't know how that would actually work in real time, but I think that is something that can probably be factored in going, you know, in the future. And then they're both just very, very against just the assault rifles and people just being able to have those huge machine guns and, you know, things of that nature. Because
so here we're talking about not just gun violence, but gun restrictions, like, you know, how to, like, well, we had the conversation of whether he was pro-gun or anti-gun, and then we were talking about, like, you know, how would you regulate, you know, weapons. So I think that's an important conversation to have, because, you know, we do have the right to bear arms. But we all know that our Constitution was written in a completely different time than we exist in. So these are important conversations to have. Like, do our laws represent the society that we currently live in? And how do we, if they don't, if they don't, how do we get everything to basically match where we're at? You know, how do we get our laws to keep the energy of where we are? So the next episode that we have an important conversation is going to be episode 8, where we talk about Black shaming. So in episode 8, it's basically the Afro-Latino movement, or the Afro-Latinx movement. And yeah, we kind of get into this notion of Black shaming. So the guest on this particular episode is Carlos Mercado, and he has a production company. He's a cinematographer and photographer, and he also makes amazing face masks with his own artwork on it. You can follow him at Taino Vision on Instagram. And so excuse me, I'm just looking for a minute. We're going to go to the 14-minute mark. Here in this snippet that we're about to watch, we kind of have the conversation of Black shaming, specifically within Latin cultures. So this is
very differently, and you know, grew up with a different mentality of like themselves that they should have grown up with, you know. And I'm, like I said, I'm happy that we're having this conversation. It's very important.
Have you in your lifetime experienced like what I'll call Black shaming in Latin cultures, where, like, you know, oh, you don't have good hair because maybe your hair, like the person's hair is a kinkier curl?
Of course, I've visually like seen this happen. You know, it still to some extent happens in, you know, in my family, and I think that to a lot of our Latin families, we're still encountering this issue. where there's not enough education, and also, you know, it's kind of interesting how it's still happening, and you know, we have this movement that's happening. You know, we still hear about these incidences where people are going to a store and they get treated a certain way. You know, and we need to have this conversation more and more. This is why this is important.
So I think it's really, really cool that we got to touch upon this, because a conversation that doesn't happen a lot, I think, within Latin spaces. And for anyone who's watched the Elouise show knows already that I am a Black woman, but I'm also of Puerto Rican descent. I am, you know, equal parts of both. But even being of Puerto Rican descent, you have African ancestry. So we're having this conversation about, should we, as you know, Puerto Ricans, just identify as Black, since we are essentially Black, and then we have a deeper dive into like Black shaming, and you know, just a whole bunch of things. And is the Afro-Latino movement pulling away from the Black Lives Matter movement? Should they be one and the same? And who should be at the forefronts of these conversations? So it's a really dope episode. Carlos Mercado is a very talented artist and a very brilliant mind, so definitely check him out at Taino Vision. Another important conversation that I have, oh my goodness, is with episode 15 with Stevenson Jean. And yeah, we're gonna go into that. We kind of have a conversation about how Haiti is doing today. So we're gonna go to the 25-minute mark of that episode. And we're just gonna check it out. If this thing autocorrects me again, let's see if it does it. Oh, it didn't. Look at that. To go.
Yeah.
So this episode we filmed on set.
To create a legacy for future generations, because to show them that they can do it.
What happened to your property after the earthquake? Your home?
No, it was fine.
It was fine?
Because I didn't grow up in the capital.
Okay.
I grew up in Cap-Haïtien.
Okay.
Yeah. The earthquake took place in Port-au-Prince.
Yeah.
It still affected different parts of the country.
I'm just not privy to like the size of the island. So, you know, we talk about what happened at the Capitol a lot, but nobody really talks about, I feel like, you know, other parts. So I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, the majority of the damage was done in Port-au-Prince.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that affect people in other parts of the island that were not a part of the capital? Like, how were they affected by that spectacle, that event?
Yeah, well, a lot of people, because we all have like around the every city in Haiti, really, everyone has like at least one person in the capital that they know or moved to the capital and everything. So some people have lost like family members, and some people had businesses that they used to rely on in order to live and everything. And it really affected Haiti in a way that's still traumatizing till this day, really.
So again, another interesting conversation about how the trauma of an event that happened 10 years ago transcended across the island, but still affects the island today. Shout out to all the Haitians out there. Shout out to Stevenson Jean and his clothing brand, Black Aveni, which you can go online at Instagram at Black Aveni, and you can shop his clothing line there. And you should also check him out. We speak about this, the first Haitian superhero movie that he will be featured in, which is produced by Sage Love Productions. So shout out to Sage Love Productions. So the next episode we're going to take a look at is going to be episode 18 with Penny Anasi. And on this episode, we kind of have this conversation. We talk about a lot. Penny Anasi is basically, she has her own podcast, For Your Thoughts podcast. And we talk about a lot of things. We do have a major conversation surrounding mental health And we're gonna go to like the 19-minute mark here. It's solely a fear of like the stigma of being crazy that people, that particularly Black people don't want to like go to therapy or take medication, or is it also probably a little bit of mistrust in our medical system? Like, you know, the fact that it just seems like way too often Black children are overly
medicated with
overly
like
medicated
alcohol and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
Do you think it, or is it
both? I think it's the first thing. It's definitely that. That's a point that I honestly have not like dived into at all, but that's very true. Like doctors don't give that many fucks about us a lot of the times. I've even been a therapist sometimes where I can tell that I'm just another number to them. And as soon as I peep that, like I'm out of there. But they're
So Penny goes into a majorly great point. If you haven't seen the episode, definitely check it out. It's episode 18 with Penny and Nasi. So we have some really great, inspiring moments. We have on episode 5, Chef Thomas Stevens talks about our history with food. We have episode 9 where we're talking jobs versus ownership and some of the keys to success. And then episode 19, the overall episode with Jordan Lowe was so very inspiring. I think I might save the snippet for last, so stay tuned. Some of my favorite moments. One of my favorite moments is, you know, episode 4 with Shantae Dunbar, who's an author of Diving in Stilettos First. So you can go follow her on Instagram at Diving in Stilettos First. And you can buy her book because it's amazing and I love her book. And yeah, she kind of talks about dating in it. She's kind of a relationship expert and she's gonna get me all the way right. I believe it. And then episode 16, I speak with Muriel, and we talk about why Black mental health is so important. We talk about a lot of things, but my favorite moment with Muriel is when we talk about the importance of Black mental health, which is actually a current like a constant conversation through a lot of the episodes. And in episode 17, you know, I have a conversation with Mobasi Nola, who has Touch of a Queen. We speak about her platforms. We speak about, you know, her upbringing, what it's like to be a Nigerian woman growing up in America. So kind of, you know, being Black, but also not being Black. So the difference, like, you know, the kind of the divide in her culture and how inspiring it is, but also weird it is to see everyone embracing African culture now. When she was younger, it was kind of a faux pas. So that's one of my other favorite moments. But for right now, the last clip that I'm going to actually show you is going to be from the last episode that I aired, which is episode 19 with Jordan Lowe. And we're going to go towards the end of the episode. To episode let's 9 see here. I believe it's the 52-minute mark. Yes, it is almost a 53-minute mark. So it's the last quarter, literally the last couple of minutes of the episode. And yeah, let's check it out. Yeah, don't judge me.
No, I love Lauryn. So say like with Lauryn Hill, right?
I gotta go with women, you know.
Yeah. So Tupac has this quote, and he says that I might not be the one that changes the world, but I guarantee you I'll spark the brain that changes the world, right? And so with Lauryn Hill, for example, what if Lauryn Hill had an OG and say her OG inspired her to rap and to make music, right? But say her OG was a better rapper, better singer, better songwriter than Lauryn Hill was, right? But say the OG just didn't have the it factor. Say she didn't have the image and all the things that came with it and wasn't good at networking and making connections. So it wasn't her position to blow, right? But say that OG was selfish and was like, nah, I'm keeping the sauce. I'm not passing game to anybody else because I want to be the one from my hood. I want to be the one from where I'm from to make it out. And so then at that point, you would have never heard Lauryn Hill. At least there's a good chance of it. Lauryn Hill would have never came out because Lauryn Hill would have never got inspired or even would have known that it was possible to do it or even got game on how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And so the OG who inspired Lauryn Hill, she was like, okay, it might not be me. I might not be the one that, you know, is in front of the whole world in the limelight, but I can touch this youngin' right here. I can show her the way. So Lauryn Hill comes up, and now Lauryn Hill is touching you and touching millions of other people. So that's what it's all about. Like, we might not be the ones that's gonna go crazy, but it could be the person after us, or it could be the person after the person we inspire. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a chain reaction. Like, just touch as many people as you can. That's the main goal.
Touch as many people as you can. How inspiring is that? That's probably one of my most favorite moments on the show. One of my most inspiring moments overall. Jordan Lowe is dope because he's all about each one teach one. This has been episode 20 of the Elouise show, where we have recaps this season. There are some episodes that you didn't get to see clips of because we have run out of time. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I want to thank everyone who's tuned into every single episode. I see you. I appreciate you. The support does not go unnoticed. Thank you very much. For anyone who popped in and out of different episodes, who watched what they could when they could, thank you. I appreciate it. And what can you expect from the next season? What you will see in the next season is definitely more in-depth conversations. You'll see some new guests, maybe some familiar faces, and a slightly new format, but we're gonna have fun, and the Elouise show will be returning in 2021. So I would like to thank all of you for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Lynette Elouise, and this has been the Elouise Show. See you next year.